Welcome to Pause for the Truth, where you can sit back, relax, and hear an honest dialogue about health, wealth, legal, and social issues. The hosts are Dr. Rogers Kane, family practice physician, and Jocelyn Turner, health education consultant, with co hosts from the Northeast Florida Medical Society and its foundation. Stay tuned for the truth about matters affecting you and your family. We're here to tell you what's really going on and why. Good evening and welcome to Pause for the Truth. I am your co host, Jocelyn Turner. It's a beautiful sunny day in Florida. But then again, Dr. Kane, I think it's a sunny day, excessive heat's almost everywhere, right? What do you think? How are you doing this evening?
I'm doing great. Maybe except in California in the Baja Desert. They see more rain than they can tolerate. But again, that's thanks to climate change and global warming. That some of these knuckleheads of a different party may finally get the message when it starts to affect their neighborhood and their homes.
Speaking of neighborhoods, Dr. Kane, it's funny you mentioned that word because tonight we are pleased and excited to have Dr. Richard Danford, president of the Jacksonville Urban League, here to talk to us about the Neighborhood Bill of Rights. Dr. Danford, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing quite well considering the heat, but we know there are ways to cool off, and we should do that. We don't want heat stroke.
Exactly, exactly. Well, Dr. Danford, it's a pleasure to have you here tonight. And one thing that I know the Jacksonville Urban League is has a history of, and that is advocating for equal rights. If you see the Urban League, I call it the equal opportunity sign. It is all about equal opportunity for all. And I know you've championed that for years. How long have you been with the Urban League now, Dr. Danford?
Actually, 31 and a half years.
A half, you counting a half, holding on to the half.
yeah,
Yeah, I should put them on
I
this.
actually, yeah, it's been 30 good years.
I should put him on the
Uh,
spot and ask him how much longer he gonna be with Urban League.
well, I'm gradually moving forward. It's
Transitioning.
well, not transition. I don't like to call it transition.
Yeah, neither do I.
I I I, I like to call it moving to the next.
Phase of your
Uh,
life. Yep.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I'm here in I'm sure the last quarter of my life, and just trying to. Your doctor, just trying to figure out from a mental health perspective, just how do you move on after spending your most of your life doing some wonderful things, for the community.
Having
Yeah,
attended the National Urban League conference, I was surprised when Mark Moriel said that he had been with the National Urban League for 20 years. I was like, gosh, boy, those years are just rolling by.
Well, you don't have to look at Mark to know that they're rolling by. I mean, it's every day we're a day older,
that's a
and
good thing.
that's a very good thing.
And championing new causes. And that's what we're here to talk about tonight, the Neighborhood Bill of Rights. Dr. Danford, I must admit, until I had a conversation with you and Dennis Stone, your
Uh-huh.
director of your Center of Advocacy and Social Justice, I didn't know anything about the Neighborhood Bill of Rights. Start off by telling our audience what is that and
What
why
is it?
are you
What is it?
championing it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let me just start off by thanking you guys very much for having me on, and having participated on a radio show for 5 years. The Empowerment Hour on Saturday mornings. I feel you, and I know it takes a lot for you guys to pull this together, bring guests on, and really focus on those things that are important to our community. And let me say that it's very confident to know that you guys have the lead way That is, there are no strings attached for your ability to make comments, that are of extreme importance to the community. So thank you guys for that. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you for that acknowledgement.
Yeah,
Coming from you, that means a lot.
oh, thank you. And as my long time physician, I want you to know how very much appreciative I am. The personal service you've gone along with me on this ride, and I'm blessed to have you to keep me in check and to keep me where I have the ability to do good.
Well, just as important, I want people to know that we've been friends, maybe not the full 31 years, but close to it. We've been friends for a long time. I'd
Yes,
probably go
sir.
somewhere around 20, 24, 25, somewhere in there.
Yeah, I remember then. You of course you had black hair and you were
All right. So much for the
but very unusual. And let me put a plug in for you. And it's unusual when you have when your doctor, your MD, is also a pharmacist by trade, a licensed pharmacist. So in terms of your competence in prescribing certain medications, I feel very confident in your ability to do that, and I appreciate what you've done for me, and certainly for my son, who is no longer here. He's out in San Diego in the Marine Corps.
Glad you said it when you say no
Yeah.
longer here.
No, I have to be careful how you say your words. I've gotten in a lot of trouble, believe me, in my 31 years simply by the words I use. So with that,
But they were never
pause for the
untruthful, much like what you going. They were never untruthful. Your words, much like what you're about to delve into in terms of the Neighborhood Bill of Rights.
of
That's
course.
about as truthful as you're going to get with what's going on in our community. And so we're looking forward to making the community aware of the efforts that you putting forth. You and the rest of the individuals over at the Urban League are putting forth and trying to get us our Bill of Rights, especially in certain neighborhoods, as we know, all neighborhoods, as a matter of fact, but some in particular have been deprived of it. Why don't you go on ahead and tell us about the Neighborhood Bill of Rights? What does it mean?
Sure. Before I talk specifically about the Neighborhood Bill of Rights, let me just a little background information. As you know, we are a consolidated form of government. And I believe it happened back during the late 60s.
Mm-hmm.
And for many reasons, obviously, at that time, the African American community had, in terms of the numbers, were very close to a majority in Jacksonville. And so I believe, I was not here, but I believe that that prompted the city fathers to, to consolidate the government, along with the fact that there was a lot of corruption going on, a lot of, contracts being given under the table, and et cetera, et cetera. And of course, you have some of that even today. So we're a consolidated government, and what it really means and boils down to is that we're in a consolidated form of government. The mayor has the supreme authority. And what I mean by that, the mayor, by law, proposes the budget for the Jacksonville community. And of course, the city council tweaks the mayor's budget, makes a few changes, but primarily it's the mayor's budget. And so what happened and what continues to happen is the inequities that pursued as a result of consolidation in terms of the districts where the black vote were relegated to certain parts of town. And frankly, we had minimal representation, and even our representatives that were very good were outnumbered, outgunned, and their hands, quite frankly, many of them were tied simply because of the numbers. And so that's why it's so crucial that our community vote for people that will represent them, because that's what it's about. You've got to have someone, somebody carrying the water for you and for your community. And that's why we elect city council people, and we expect them, to take care of our needs, in those various neighborhoods. Uh, some have been better than others, I must say, but uh, many in the city recognize that there were some limitations. While there were strengths in consolidation, there were also some limitations. And the limitation really was that it was impossible through the current setup or design of city government that there will be an equitable distribution of financial of economic resources. It's just not going to happen. It has not happened. It's not going to happen going forward. So in around 1995, 94, 95, City Council stepped up and decided to provide a mechanism such that citizens could receive and provide input into the processes of city government. Um, uh, Unfortunately, um, the Neighborhood Bill of Rights had some quirks, and we were and obviously I want to talk more about those quirks and where we're going with that. But as I said, in 1995, City Council passed an ordinance, and it is Ordinance 95-247-106. And this ordinance is establishing the City of Jacksonville's Neighborhood Bill of Rights, declaring a city policy of implementing the provisions of the Neighborhood Bill of Rights as the regular course of business in city government, requesting the mayor's office to take immediate steps to ensure understanding of and compliance with the Neighborhood Bill of Rights by all city administrative departments, providing an effective date, da 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 da. And what this does, this ordinance, if you review it, it has quite a bit of information as to the expectations uh, uh, that citizens should receive, should have from as they participate in government affairs and gaining attempts to gain access to, really what is happening that impact their neighborhoods. So after leading the efforts of the Urban League for so many years, I became disgruntled, disheartened by the fact that there was such there's been so much growth and development, economic development in this city. When we think about just spending, we have a $2 billion budget now, this city government, and you would think that $2 billion, you would not have communities, particularly those of color, that are struggling and have not necessarily made any progress since consolidation. And so we as at the Urban League, we're an advocacy organization and we provide program services. And we found it very difficult, and we find it very difficult because of the inability of the city to equitably distribute the resources to our communities, to organizations that provide services to those communities that are disenfranchised, that are marginalized, and so we attend city council meetings, and we have 3 minutes to respond to various projects, and we beg the council to provide help for us in our neighborhoods. However, the majority of that goes unanswered. As a matter of fact, citizens are really not given any respect, period, as they come before the city council to voice their concerns and trying to participate in the affairs of the city. So unless you quote in the ruling party, and unless you have a majority on the city council, and unless you have city council members that are representing you 100%, rather than representing themselves and the wishes of the mayor. And so the Black community in particular is between a rock and a hard place. We have no fight left. We've marched, we've protested, and I just want to just do not a shout out, but I want to thank Ben Frazier for the work. The sleepless nights, the pushing for what's best for our neighborhoods. We don't have a lot of that. We don't have a lot of people with the interest. They may have the interest, but whether they have the power to advocate for the poor and for the marginalized and for those people that are hurting, that are crying, that are struggling with mental health issues. We've got many in our veterans population who are African Americans who live in these neighborhoods, who are struggling with post-traumatic stress disorder. I can relate to that, having served in Vietnam over 50 years ago, and now continue to struggle with PTSD. But no, it's not necessarily about the trauma of getting shot or seeing an individual shot, blown up, blood everywhere. It's the PTSD of dealing with the racism that permeates our society. And Maya Angelou had a wonderful quote, about racism and how it just oozes. It's like a worm. It gets in you and it moves around and it's all over you. And so all of us have ways to cope with that. And we, in all of our professions, I'm preaching to the choir. I know whether you're in the healthcare profession, whether you're in government, whether you're an entrepreneur struggling, trying to get resources to start or grow your business, to hire people in your neighborhoods. It's been a struggle, and we have not given up, and we're not going to give up. And that's why we have pivoted to looking at the legal aspect of how we can gain access to city government. And so we reach back to the 1995 ordinance, the Neighborhood Bill of Rights, which
and Dr. Danforth, let me stop you for a second too.
Sure.
I did my homework, and when I was looking, because again, to be honest with you, I wasn't quite sure because I wasn't familiar with the concept of neighborhood bill of rights. I did my
Uh-huh.
research, and it says a neighborhood bill of rights typically refers to a set of principles or guidelines that outlines the rights and responsibilities of individuals within a particular neighborhood or community. While there isn't
Yes.
a university recognized standard for a neighborhood bill of rights, it generally aims to promote a sense of community, cooperation, and mutual respect among residents. Dr. Danford, it seems that in Jacksonville, I know in my neighborhood, they're building a fire station, they're building two communities, and there's a one-way in to this community. So I'm wondering, when you talk about citizen involvement, they had community meetings, but quite frankly, I felt the decision was already made. They were going to proceed. And so what is the infrastructure that should have been put in place prior to putting those added things? Nobody is against growth. Everybody loves that growth happens. However, you
Hmm.
still have to have the infrastructure. I know we've talked about in some conversations that I've been in about complete streets, the bike lanes and just proper roadway for people to navigate to minimize traffic fatalities, so on and so forth. And quite frankly, in my neighborhood, the answer that they've given in our community are speed bumps, right? And to me,
Right.
that's not an answer. That's a band-aid. So when you talk about the Jacksonville Urban League advocating and the different challenges that you've had with that this community has had over the years with resources going, distributed evenly, if you will, over the community. Let's just really focus this moment on why should people care that we have a Bill of Rights? Are you suggesting that citizens don't have any other way to give their input typically other than that 3 minute that they have at the podium during city council meeting, or do they have any other opportunity to be involved at the beginning? Because again, in some instances, when they get to city council meetings, decisions have already been formed perhaps by the council people. So you're suggesting that the Bill of Rights is a way to get citizen involvement earlier?
Yes, I am. I mean, if you look at the neighborhood bill of rights, you can go online and it's on the city's website. But and there's quite a bit of information. But if you dig down, there's some areas that I want to mention.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, the neighborhood bill of rights uh, uh, indicates that um, that citizens should receive one prompt, courteous, informed responses to all questions regarding city business. That's the first thing. The
Mm-hmm.
second thing here, advance notification of any city related public works or utility project taking place within or adjacent to a neighborhood. Paving, water, sewer, drainage, insulation, park renovation, the whole 9 yards. Okay, that's
Mm-hmm.
the second one. The
Mm-hmm.
third one, notification of the submission of any application for rezoning. Okay, I understand just today that uh, we're on. One moment, please.
While he doing that, Rick, I mean, if you can go ahead, if you need to do something, I was just
No,
gonna.
no,
Oh, okay, go
go
ahead.
ahead. Go ahead. No,
No, you go
the
ahead.
third one. Yeah, the third one is notification of submission of any application for rezoning.
Mm-hmm.
And I mention that because I'm hearing that a new morgue is being built in a neighborhood where people did not even know that it was going to come there.
A more.
Okay, Morgue, the city morgue. So that's
Wow.
okay. So the next
And
one
Dr.
is
Stanford, we're not going to even talk about that liquor store that was built across the street from a school, and the citizens are fighting for that. Yeah.
As an example. As
well,
another.
and then again, you've got to look at your representation. Okay, if this is not happening in your community, then you've got to look at, I mean, I'm sorry, but that's what you're going to have to do. Now, the fourth thing, which I'm very interested in, and we're very interested, and that is that citizens have the opportunity for formal input into the annual budget process. Okay, including the opportunity to express preferred city government priorities, suggested capital improvement projects, and other statements that fairly represent the opinion of a majority of the neighborhood's residents. Now, I'm going to stop on this. Opportunity for formal input into the annual budget process. The budget process is taking place as we sit here on this video, this podcast. Okay, Donna Deegan was elected mayor. She was installed. She had 2 weeks to review Curry's budget, which is what it is. It's the formal mayor's budget. Okay, and by law he can do that. So all of the stuff that the mayor wanted, at the exclusion of what we citizens wanted, is in the budget. And so now the budget is at the city council level, and it goes before various committees, and they tweak it and they talk about it, and the city council members, it's a tit for tat. I will pass this if you put this in there, and that's the negotiation part of it. And I don't have a problem with that. The problem I have is that we don't have access. We cannot. There's not a point at which a formal process where we can really have input into the budget process. So.
And Dr. Danforth, let me put a pause in there for a moment,
sure,
and really talk about the significance of that. It's not as though you've been around for, and I'm going to say it, 20 years like the Jaguars have been in Jacksonville. Not saying that the Jaguars are not making a significant financial benefit to the community, but the Jacksonville Urban League has been in this community over 75 years. So you would think that you would be an organization that would be recognized, respected, and not just the Jacksonville Urban League, but even other organizations who have been serving the citizens of this community would be a part of the process. And by the way, I didn't want you to stop on number 4. I wanted you to read number 5, and I do have that in front of me. A timely personal response of its district council person or that council person's aide to questions directed to the city council. By the way, right, that process has failed me numerous times with a council in the past who never responded to calls that I've made. So you're right, the processes are broken and need some fixing, right? And we know it's not going to happen overnight. If you're just tuning in, we're talking with Dr. Richard Danforth about the Neighborhood Bill of Rights and why it is important, because it is an opportunity and a way for citizens to be involved. For example, as Dr. Danforth just said, in the budget process, when the city has a budget right now of $2 billion as proposed, how many of you have had the opportunity to give your input into that? If you have a question or a comment, dial in 888-669-1280. I would also like to pause for a minute. I forgot at the beginning, so forgive me. A couple of weeks ago, we started a Pause for the Truth History Makers Minute. August 22nd, 2023, as we reflect on the past and present, it is important to recognize the people and events who have made significant contributions to America and the rest of the world. Robert Robinson Taylor is widely considered to be the first academically trained and credentialed Black architect in America. Growing up in North Carolina, Taylor worked as a carpenter and foreman for his prosperous father, Henry Taylor, who was the son of a white enslaver and a Black woman. Educated at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, or MIT as we refer to it, Taylor's final project for a bachelor's degree in architecture was designed for a soldier's home. It examined housing, excuse me, to accommodate aging Civil War veterans. How timely, right, Dr. Danforth? You like that.
Yes.
Booker T. Washington recruited him to help establish Tuskegee Institute in Alabama, a campus now forever associated with Taylor's work. The architect died suddenly on December 13, 1942, while visiting Tuskegee Chapel in Alabama. In 2015, he was honored by being featured on a stamp issued by the United States Postal Service. So we are just pleased to bring those history makers. Again, as I said last week, we're telling our stories if nobody else wants to. Thank you, Dr. Danforth, for allowing us to interject that. And I'll go ahead and, by the way, read number 6. The opportunity to participate in the design of publicly funded projects within or adjacent to the neighborhood. Go ahead, Dr. Danforth, and get your next point in, or Dr. Kane, if you had a question of Dr. Danforth.
I was going to let him get his next point, but I have a couple of things to deal with. Go ahead, Richard.
Well, let me, yeah, that's fine. You can please, Richard is great. I wanted to pivot back to the COVID situation. I know that we were involved quite a bit in that, Dr. Kane, and your efforts in terms of attempting to bring resources to those communities, to the Black communities, and it was very disconcerting that the past mayor during that very difficult time for us received the American Rescue Dollar money to assist our neighborhoods, and the administration, the past administration, was very exclusive in terms of how they passed out the money. They were exclusive in terms of organizations that receive funding to assist our neighborhoods, and what happens is that can happen because we really have no input. So if you have no input, then others will receive the resources to assist us. What we're saying is that why is it that we need others in our communities to solve our problems for us? Why can't we receive the necessary resources for us to resolve our own issues? And that's where we are. When I say we're between a rock and a hard place, I don't see any other way for any relief under the consolidated city government. There's nothing going to happen going forward, and I'm very supportive about Mayor Deegan going forward. I look forward to her hard work and what she's going to do to help our communities. But until the council, the city council, and the city conform to the law, okay? Conform to the law. They are actually out of compliance with the Neighborhood Bill of Rights. They've gone so far to resist input from the community. They've gone so far by indicating that the Neighborhood Bill of Rights was never codified. So if it wasn't codified, then the council has no legal, has no reason to allow the citizens to have input. And so that is what's happening as we speak. We're not going to move the cheese at all. And we've witnessed that certainly over the 40 years that I've been in Jacksonville, the grind, the over and over, dealing with the same issues over and over and over, whether it's the lack of funding, whether it's the lack of contracts for our small businesses in our communities. You know, they come up with creative ways through the quote JSEB program that is designed to help us gain access. I mean, white folk don't need a JSEB in order to receive funding from the city. Why do black folk need a special program to work their butts off to try to get funding from the city to take care of their neighborhoods when the law says that we have the right and that the city must allow us input into the process? Now,
And if we get it, it's inadequate amount of money, it's chump change that they basically give us. And that's usually to selected individuals who play the house Negro game with some of these people, to be quite frank with you.
is that what you call it? Is that
That's
what
what
you
I
call
call
it?
it.
Hey, a spade is a spade is a spade.
So, Dr. Denver, what do we need to do? What needs to happen in order for the city council folks and the mayor to recognize this? If it's a law, what needs to happen? We have a following here on our podcast. So, what is it that folks can do who are listening to make sure that this neighborhood Bill of Rights is indeed enforced and active?
Well, before he gets there, let me ask this question. I just want a few points of clarification, and that is codification. When you
Right.
say codified, define that for our listeners.
Codified means that they put it in. You know, they pass a lot of ordinances, okay, and they eventually codify them and put them into the charter, okay. So what happened with the Neighborhood Bill of Rights? They decided to put in a mechanism for zoning. So they codified the zoning aspect because there are enforceable rights. You know, they can enforce zoning decisions. But they said they did not codify the part that says formal input into the annual budget process because there was no way, there was no way to make that happen. You know, legally.
So in essence, they're denying the citizens of Jacksonville
Yes.
a mechanism by which to participate in governing their own city and themselves. They deny them input by not, quote unquote, codifying the stated language that citizens should have input.
Right.
Hold on a second, Dr. Danforth. I looked up codification. To codify means to arrange laws, rules, or regulations into a systematic code. The process of codification can involve taking judicial decisions or legislative acts and turning them into codified law. This process does not necessarily create new law. It merely arranges existing law, usually by subject, which is exactly what you just said.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, but they did do it though, right? I mean,
no, it was never codified.
Okay.
I received. Okay, so we filed a complaint with the Inspector General's office that we were not able to provide input. We received a ruling from the General Counsel's office that it had not been codified, and so the council has no reason to allow citizens input. And of course, the way that certain members of our council, at least in the past, interacted with citizens, they actually believe that they don't have to allow participation. I mean, when you think back when the city council and Ben Frazier trying to express his concerns, I mean, This gentleman was in a wheelchair and they dragged him out of the city council. Okay, he just happens to be an African American man, but that's how we are treated in this city. Okay, there's a lack of respect for us, for Black people, particularly Black males, okay, in this city. So whether you're a city councilman or whatever you are, there's a tendency to be for you to be marginalized, and so we have no other recourse than to fight, and I mean it. We've got to demand from the council, as we've been demanding for everything else that we haven't gotten. Okay, we haven't gotten jack that we've asked for. Okay?
So we need to demand codification to start.
That's one part of it.
Right.
Demand codification. Just codify that. But even, let me say this, the general counsel has already said, not on this, but they're saying that some of their ordinances that says shall sometimes can mean may.
Got it.
It depends on if they want to change it, which they do. Okay? So we're not allowed to provide input into the budget, but the city council members, they're allowed to provide input. They're allowed to apply for funding directly to the city, and they're representing us. And so I don't understand how you can do that. I don't understand how a council member can receive $250,000 of play money every year to pass out to their constituents.
Chicken and watermelon is what I call it.
250, okay? I don't want no fried chicken.
Right. I don't want your watermelon either.
Okay? I want equal access. I don't want to continue to be economically discriminated against. And that is what's happening, y'all. The Black community is being economically discriminated against. Okay?
Well,
certain neighborhoods are being economically discriminated against.
Let me ask you a question,
go ahead.
Dr. Danford. So how many members on the city council?
19.
How many of them are Black at the moment?
In color?
Yes. In color.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean that.
Yes, you did. And I did too. But go ahead.
I don't know, but that may be 5. I can't count them. We've
I
got.
At one times it was 7, at least 7 or 8.
It's not as many as it used to be. And by the way,
so what's your point? What's your point now? You're saying how many? I know you're headed with that.
Well, I wanted to look at the demographics of our city council makeup: Black, Democratic, so-called Democrats. There's a certain block of votes that can be. You would think that you'd be able to elicit to allow the citizens. We ain't just saying Black citizens, okay? Because some of this stuff doesn't just affect the Black community. It affect all communities, and there are a lot of places in Duval that fairly well integrated. So that's why I mean it affects a lot of the community. And there are a lot of people at either at-large city council or whether or not they in specific zones or districts, as you want to call them, that supposedly represent that committee. You used the word shout out earlier. I'm going to put shout out versus vote out, in which we have to start taking serious the people that we elect in office, that if they don't want to do the will of the citizens within their zone or their district, okay, vote them out. I don't care if they look like your mama. Vote them out, okay? Because that means your mama ain't doing you no good. She's not in your best interest, okay? And so I have a real issue with people not representing us. But our problem is, because you said we had no other recourse but to do something. And we're going to go back to what Pause for the Truth has been saying our whole time on air. It's about voting and knowing what you voting, knowing what and who you voting for. Get educated on your voting. Do what you need to do to make your community better by not just accepting that house person approach to politics, where all they doing is padding their pocket. You mentioned 250. That seems to be a fair number. You mentioned a while back, you talked about COVID when we were, one of the reasons Pause for the Truth started was about COVID and the lack of equity in terms of the treatment in the Black community. We did get some response because we got out there and we made ourselves vocal, verbal, visual. Okay, the 3 V's.
Right.
Vocal, verbal, and visual. We made ourselves like that, and it didn't do any good. Didn't do any good until we did just that. Made ourselves vocal, verbal, and visual, and called out those city council people. You can go for Lot J, which people in Jacksonville know what that means. You can go for Lot J, but you couldn't go for making sure that the East Side was protected against COVID and the ravages of COVID as it related to what it was doing to the community, or even the beaches in certain areas. They were not. So it's not just a Black fight, it's a citizens fight. However, it just so happens that the inequity leans heavily toward the Black community.
Very, very much so. Very, very much so. And let me say this: it's disingenuous that you would have African American representation on the city council, and they are not leading the fight.
Exactly.
For citizens to have formal input into the process.
For citizens' rights. For citizens' rights.
I don't get it, and I mean, regardless to your party affiliation, and the fact that we lost. I believe we lost a Black representative, city, with this redistricting. So we have less, and we have almost even Democrat and Republican African American representation. So we're sort of in some we're between a rock and a hard place.
Well, that's why I asked that's why I asked Dr. Danforth, what can we do? I mean, you've educated us on what the problem is. So what is it that our listeners can do in order to, do we need to write letters? Do we need to, I'm just asking what's the solution at this point moving forward that we can do to help make this happen?
We need something to rally around in our community. It's very quiet now.
I think people are waiting.
They're figuring out who's going to get what in the budget, while we're sitting on the outside waiting to see what's going to happen. Okay, there's nothing positive that's going to happen. We're not going. There's no funding. That we talk about all this infrastructure. I'm so sick of talking about cesspools.
Septic tanks.
Septic tanks. Every time, all of the talk is about when it relates to infrastructure in this town. They talk as it relates to us. They talk about septic tanks. They don't talk about building new facilities.
That's because
expand.
That's because it's bull SIHT. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There are a lot of communities that are not on the city water, sewer and water line, and it's very expensive for them to do that. And so I have to advocate for the people who are still with. By the way, if you're just tuning in, although we're nearing the end of our show, we were talking about the Neighborhood Bill of Rights So if you would like to learn more about it, as Dr. Danforth said, you can go on the City of Jacksonville's website, and maybe you are an advocate or a champion who can figure out how to make this happen. So you can reach out to the Urban League to give your input. If you believe that citizens should have more involvement in the $2 billion budget that's being presented. And by the way, one thing that we haven't said, that's not anybody else's money. That's citizens' money that we pay taxes and, property taxes and school taxes and all kind of other taxes in order to make sure that our government works effectively. And we do hope that with this new administration that we do see some positive things. But as Dr. Danforth said, what she was given is the former mayor's budget. And I thought it was a little absurd, Dr. Danforth, when I heard that she had a couple of weeks to approve the budget. So that let you know then that it was somebody else's budget. It was not really what she perhaps wanted to do. So hopefully, you said that the 19 city council person had 50,000. That's $4.7.5 million that they get to play with and decide what they want to do with in their districts. But again, there was a study done some time ago, and it may be one even recent that was done on the financial impact that nonprofit organizations make in this community. And so people have to realize that although we appreciate for-profit businesses, nonprofits make just as much of an impact in this community. And so to have a process for nonprofits and those small businesses that are in communities providing much needed resources to communities, that they get a fair share of the money. Because as Dr. Kane can tell you, what his disgust has been, not that we don't appreciate the Jacksonville Jaguars, but it seems that the millions and millions of dollars that are being allocated in this city are going to big businesses in terms of the Jaguars and others who may not have to pay taxes and allowed to bring their businesses here and so on and so forth. No one is ever saying that we don't want those other things to happen. But I think Dr. Danforth has just said we want the funds to be dispersed equitably. And my favorite saying is, if you're not on the menu, if you're not at the table, then you won't be on the menu. So who is championing the causes for the small businesses in communities, the nonprofits who are providing those much needed services and resources for communities? So we are nearing the end of the hour, Dr. Danforth. I'm going to give you, hold on. I know you still have a lot to say. We'll bring you back. But we'd like to give our guests an opportunity to say their final thoughts. So I can tell that you're very passionate about this, Dr. Danforth. What are your final thoughts that you'd like to leave with our viewers for tonight?
Well, let me ask just one question before he does that. Is the fact that the mayor only has 2 weeks, has that been codified in terms of what really?
Yes. That's the law. That's the law.
So that's codified.
Most definitely that's codified.
All right.
Codified.
Okay. I just making sure people knew what codified means.
Let me say, Jocelyn, you mentioned what can we do. I think community engagement is critical now. Okay. And we've got and going forward, we will make we are making community engagement an important aspect of what we're doing at the Urban League. We've got to bring our communities together, and we have a lot of issues. But at some point, all of us, we've got to come to the table, and just strategize. For our survival. We're being eaten up. We're being eaten alive, and until we wake up, they run around talking about woke. We're the ones that need to be woke because we're being eaten alive and disregarding us when there's a law that says that we have certain rights, and that the council passed. This is a city law that they passed, but yet they will not put themselves in compliance. They are not in compliance of their own ordinance. So it's out of both sides of their mouths. They have their cake and they're eating it too, and we're on the menu. Thank you all very much for having me on. Y'all have a blessed day.
Don't get off yet, Dr. Danforth. Hold on. Dr. Kane, what are your final thoughts, just in case you had a question or whatever as you finish the tonight's discussion for Dr. Danforth?
Well, you know how I am. I think a couple of things. I think our city officials, mayor and city council, really need to step up, step out, put forth all kind of efforts to make sure that their citizens are well represented. I don't see that happening. Okay. I know we got a new mayor and she needs time, and we're willing to give her that time. The problem is, let's not make the same mistakes that have been done in the past. And they weren't necessarily mistakes. They might have been intentional, but let's not make those same poor efforts and poor decisions that have been made in the past. Be ready to disrupt. You know, the future of America, they always use this word as one of the spoken words that people use is disruption, disruption, disruption. If you can't, if everything is status quo and keeps going as it did with our ancestors or our previous politicians or our previous decisions that are being made, that means everything is going to remain the same. If you can't disrupt what is ongoing in your community for the benefit of the community, then we have a problem. To be futuristic with what we want to do with our community, whether it's global warming, which Jacksonville is participating in that global warming community, whether it wants to or not. Okay, we need plans for it. Those plans include how to handle healthcare related issues when it comes down to the effects of global warming. These viruses that we've seen, they ain't coming out of nowhere. They coming from glaciers and other places that have melted and releasing viruses that are 10,000, 15,000 years old. And not to get too much on that, I mean, I can talk about that for days, but our problem is we have to focus on what's best for everybody in Jacksonville. And if you focus on what's best for all the citizens of Jacksonville, you would then recognize that there are certain citizens, as Dr. Danforth has said, that have been that the treatment has been very disparate in terms of what they have done for their communities. We have to hold our city leaders accountable, and that starts from city council up to the mayor. I don't care who else lies in between, but those are the two institutions that we really have to go after and vote them out or vote them in, okay? Depending on what they have done and their response. That's what the other community does. If you don't do what they want to be done, they will vote you out. We need to do the same. I don't care. There's somebody that's very smart in my life that says not all skin folks are kin folks. And I think that they're absolutely correct that you have to, I don't care what they look like, blue, green, yellow, black, white, doesn't make a difference. If they ain't doing what's best for the interests of the citizens of Jacksonville, get rid of them.
Boy, an MD can say what he wants, boy, but a PhD can't.
Well, MD that has a podcast can.
Dr. Kane, is that it for you?
Yeah, that's it. I'll leave it alone. I got a whole lot of we only
So
hour long, I gotta leave it alone.
I would like to end with some examples when we talk about neighborhood Bill of Rights. Here are some examples of what rights that we want. Right to a safe environment, right to clean air and water, right to privacy, right to participate, and that is participate in community decision-making processes and have a say in matters that affect our neighborhoods, right to quality education, right to adequate housing, right to freedom from discrimination, right to peaceful enjoyment, right to civic engagement, right to freedom of expression, right to basic services. Residents have the right to access essential services such as water, electricity, waste disposal, and healthcare. right to responsible governance, right to maintain property, right to cultural and social diversity, right to quiet enjoyment. You can tell that those things that I listed are basic rights that we all want throughout Jacksonville, not for just certain parts of Jacksonville, but for all parts of Jacksonville. If you would like to be involved and learn how to be involved in assuring that our city codifies, modifies, whatever it needs to do in order to enforce the Neighborhood Bill of Rights, just simply to give us the opportunity to be a part of the process, then reach out to your elected official, your city council person. You don't have to leave all the work to the Jacksonville Urban League to advocate for. All of us have a right every time we vote. When we make a decision, folks come to us before the election asking for our votes. It's our time, it's your time to go back to those folks and say, what do you know about how come we don't have a neighborhood bill of rights? And I want you to champion it. If not, I am going to make sure when you're coming back to me for reelection, I'm going to let all my friends and neighbors know not to vote for you because you're not listening. To our viewers, thank you as always for tuning in to Pause for the Truth. Tune in next week as we bring to you another discussion that hopefully will enlighten you and allow you to get involved and share it with others. Thank you again, Dr. Danforth, for joining us. Have a great evening, everyone.
Thank you.